So, good day everyone. My name is Jamarisika Sangyaw and I am here to discuss the lesson 17 field studies. So, what is field studies? So, field studies are a type of learning activity that happens outside the classroom. So, where students gather and analyze real-world data. Unlike regular classroom lessons that rely on books or videos, field studies immerse learners in actual context, such as within the school, nearby community places, or institutions, so that they can directly observe and experience what they are learning. For example, when a class goes to the museum and brings a data gathering chart to record details about tools, pottery, and clothing, the students are required to analyze their observations by asking what the artifacts reveal about early Filipino life and how they show adaptation to the environment. So, the purpose here is investigation and interpretation. Now, we will know the benefits of the social studies sa mga students. First, it promotes critical thinking and curiosity. Second, it improves long-term retention and cognitive development. Third, it encourages positive attitudes towards subjects. Fourth, it provides real-world application of lessons. Fifth, it enhances motivation through active participation. So, field studies promotes critical thinking and curiosity because learners are encouraged to observe, question, and analyze what they encounter outside the classroom. This approach also improves long-term retention and cognitive development as students are more likely to remember concepts when they directly experience and apply them. And field studies encourages positive attitudes toward the subject since lessons become more engaging and meaningful rather than abstract. They also provide opportunities for real-world application of classroom lesson. For example, learning about community governance while visiting the barangay hall. And they enhance motivation through active participation as students feel more involved and responsible for their own learning. And now, we will know the benefits ng field studies sa teachers naman. So first, the opportunity to teach authentic tasks linked to curriculum. Second, it targets multiple learning competencies. Third, it creates unique teachable moments not possible in class. So, for teachers, field studies can create opportunities to teach authentic tasks linked directly to the curriculum. Instead of relying only to textbooks, they can guide students in real settings where concepts come alive. Field studies also allow teachers to target multiple learning competencies at once, such as critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and social awareness. And they open the door to unique teachable moments. For example, an unexpected community event or local practice that cannot be replicated within the classroom. And here are the examples of field study venues. First is the school campus, where students might analyze environmental practices like waste segregation. And second, nearby rivers or parks, where they can study geography, ecosystems, or environmental issues. Next is government offices, where they learn about governance and public service. And fourth is the supermarkets, where they can explore economics, trade, and consumer behavior. And fifth, the barangay or community centers, where they can investigate cultural practices, leadership structures, or local problem solving. So, you might ask, why do we need to use field studies? Pwede namang sa classroom na lang, magle-lecture na lang si teacher. Mas less hassle pa yon. So, we need to use field studies because first, it provides experiential learning. Field studies let students learn by doing and experiencing instead of just listening or watching. Seeing real objects, events, and processes that are not found in the classroom makes learning more concrete and meaningful. For example, instead of just watching a video about plants, students can visit a nearby garden to observe how vegetables grow and interact with the farmer. Second, it targets specific skills and knowledge. Students can practice real life skills, apply classroom theories, and develop values through hands on experiences that they wouldn't gain from books or lectures alone. For example, learners visit a supermarket to practice math skills like measuring, estimating costs, and budgeting, while also learning about consumer responsibility. Third, it strengthens schema. By connecting field studies to what they already know, learners validate and deepen their understanding. This strengthens their mental framework or schema and helps them better remember and apply concepts. For example, after learning about water pollution in class, students visit a nearby river. Seeing the actual waste validates what they learned and deepens their understanding of environmental issues. Fourth, it motivates values development. Experiencing a real situation firsthand builds appreciation, empathy, and responsibility. For example, visiting a river might develop concern for the environment, or going to government office may foster respect for civic duties. And now, we will know what are the challenges in field studies. First is the curriculum alignment. One of the most defeated purposes of field studies is its curricular relevance. Sometimes, if not most of the time, the curriculum aspect is replaced by leisure engagement. To ensure curriculum alignment, teachers must thoroughly plan and execute the desired learning outcomes before any other purpose. So, one of the most common issue in field study is when the activity becomes more a leisure trip than learning experience. So, the original purpose, linking lessons to real world concepts, gets lost. Teachers must plan activities that connect directly to the curriculum so that students learn while enjoying the trip. So, example, a grade 5 science goes on a trip to a beach. If the teacher only lets students swim and play, the educational purpose is lost. But if the teacher prepares activities such as testing water salinity, observing marine life, and linking it to lessons on ecosystems, then the field studies align with the curriculum. Second, lack of understanding of field studies. Before conducting the activity, teachers must ensure that learners have fully understood the nature and purpose of the field study. Failure to do so can contribute to the downfall of the activity. Hence, as a part of the preparation, teachers should teach the essential kickstart concept to the learners. So the students may not fully understand why they are going on the trip. If the purpose is unclear, they might treat it like a vacation instead of learning opportunity. So teachers here must explain objectives, expectations, and outcomes before the trip. For example, before visiting a museum, a teacher explains that the goal is to compare historical artifacts with the lessons in history class. Without this orientation, students might just take photos and miss the real learning. And third, it is costly. Financial requisite is the biggest problem in this teaching strategy. This is also the reason why teachers tend to engage in virtual field trips rather than actual site visits. Field studies often require money for transportation, entrance fees, food, and materials. Some families cannot afford these expenses, which limits participation. For example, a trip to a science center in another city may cost 500 pesos to 1,000 pesos per student. So to address this, some school, instead of using virtual field trips, or they will choose nearby or free community-based sites. Lastly is the safety. This is the most debated issue among others. In recent years, we had witnessed various events where students' safety became the talk of the town. This resulted in the passing of government and institutional policies. Recently, the Department of Education lifted the moratorium on off-campus activities and implemented new guidelines that adhere to K-12 demands. To ensure safety, all schools must abide by its provisions. So the biggest concern is keeping students safe during travel and at the site. Risks include accidents, illnesses, or losing track of students. This is why DepEd and other institutions enforced strict guidelines before permitting off-campus activities. Example is yung in 2019, a news report highlighted a bus accident involving students on a field trip, which led DepEd to temporarily ban of campus activities. Today, schools must strictly follow safety guidelines. For example, enough teachers, chaperones, medical kits, signed parent consent, accredited transport services. So what to keep in mind when planning and doing field studies? For smooth and successful field study, the Center for Teaching and Learning 2019 enumerated things that teachers need to keep in mind in planning and conducting the said activity. First is the awareness. In a starter kit, teachers basically have to condition the learners before the actual visit. Teachers need to point out the purpose, the do's and don'ts during the visit, and most importantly, the assessment part. Having a prepared mind comes the responsibility and accountability. The learners will be able to learn about their freedom as well as their limitations while enjoying data gathering. So, students really must know the objectives, roles, and expected output before the trip. For example, before a field trip to mangrove forest, the teacher discusses safety rules. For example, no swimming, wear proper footwear, ganyan, and expected behavior. And they need to record observations for their science report. Second, engage. The most significant factor that teachers need to highlight is student involvement. They have to plan out every detail and experience that the learners need to undergo through. So keep in mind that all the learners must be exposed to the same degree of engagement to ensure that all of them are learning. So all students must actively participate in the planned activities, not just a few. For example, in a visit to a dairy farm, instead of only watching, students take turns milking cows, interviewing farm workers, and observing the process of milk production. Third, metacognitive learning. The excitement should not stop on the site visit itself. The most important part still is the deepening and valuing of knowledge and skills learned from experiences. Never let good learning opportunity pass away without ensuring learning. Learning should not end at the site. Teachers must help students reflect and process what they experience. For example, after visiting a historical site, the teacher asks students to write a reflection essay comparing what they saw with what they learned from textbooks. So next is build upon. Curiosity signals effective and motivational learning. To start up the curiosity among learners, teachers must conduct prior research on the environment or event that they have to visit. Imposing trivial questions and supplementing information during the conduct of the study augments interests and encourages deeper learning among the learners. So teachers should spark curiosity through prior knowledge and questioning before the visit. For example, before a trip to planetarium, the teacher asks students, what do you think stars are made of? Or why do planets have different colors? This motivates them to look for answers during the visit. Next is illustrate. Never fail to integrate ideas in real life. The integration could happen during the on-site visit or inside the classroom. Experiential learning becomes more effective when it's placed on the reality context. Learners should be able to see the applicability of learned knowledge so that they can successfully live what they have learned. Lastly, assess. As part of the educative process, it is relevant to ensure that the learners have gained the desired competencies and knowledge. This could be done through effective, meaningful, and aligned assessment activities. So, to ensure learning, teachers must evaluate whether objectives were achieved. For example, after a field trip to a science museum, students take a quiz on exhibits they studied or present group projects that connect what they learned to classroom lessons. Thank you for listening. That's all. Thank you.